This video is dedicated for those who are in the 12-step program, and the topic that I'm going to speak about is a willingness to be changed. Once upon a time lived two young people named Leonard and Lucy, and Leonard and Lucy were the most likely to get married, at least according to their classmates. They were the most likely to have 2.2 kids with the white picket fence. And so one day they were joined in marriage, Leonard and Lucy, and everything was perfect. They were the perfect couple as their classmates predicted. But one day Leonard started to have nightcaps, and it just didn't happen once a week. This happened every night. So Lucy cornered Leonard and said, well, what's this all about? And Leonard made this great promise. Lucy, I promise you, if things start to go sideways, I will change my ways. And so as time started to go along, Lucy began to notice that Leonard would drink after work. Sometimes he would come home with booze on his breath. So once again, after about 2 weeks, Lucy confronted Leonard and said, hey, what's going on? And Leonard promised her once again, if things start to go sideways, I will change my ways. And of course, Lucy, with the tenderness in her heart, that great love she had for Leonard, took these words and absorbed them deeply. And so as time goes on, Leonard starts to put alcohol in his morning coffee. And still comes home with the smell of alcohol on his breath, and also has his nightcap. So Lucy really corners Leonard this time around, and she says, you know what, Leonard, I think this is becoming a problem. And Leonard says to her, if things start to go sideways, I will change my ways. So one day, Leonard comes home early from work, and he claims that he has been fired. And so Lucy said, so is this the moment when things have gone sideways? She said, well, maybe you ought to not change, but maybe you ought to have a willingness to change. And so that's the key, is to have the willingness to change. But I like to go back. And, the main theme that we are talking about in these Twilight retreats is the spiritual wisdom of the 12-step program. And really, the 12-step program will give us wisdom on how to live our lives. And if we think of our spirituality as the thing that governs the decisions we make, the way we treat our finances, the way we relate with other people and who we relate with, and then how we live our lives, we are going to be blessed with wisdom flowing from that to live our lives. Now, if we go back, I remember going to a high school, and a police officer was giving a presentation on why young people do drugs. And the main reason why they do drugs is to feel better. Now, sometimes this is because they want to escape something, and that's the motivation. Other times it's just simply, I want to feel good. I want to experience something. And that's the purpose. And sometimes this gives the people confidence. Sometimes this helps to take the edge off. And so what we recognize is that the program is more than just walking away from an addictive substance like alcohol or drugs, but it is applying the 12 steps to our lives. Because what will happen even after we give up a drug that we are addicted to, or alcohol, is the bills will still come in. We're still going to have resentments, and we possibly may carry the doom and gloom of our character that existed before. And so really the 12 steps helps us to more than just give up our addiction. It also helps to instruct our behavior and our attitude towards life. And when we started working the steps, it's not that we necessarily understood what this was all about, but as we began to work the steps, they began to make sense. And so they might not make sense in the beginning, but they will make sense as time goes on. And so really, when we have in our cars or our trucks, we have a check engine light. Now, oftentimes I just put a piece of duct tape over that light, or I hope that it goes off, and even if it goes off for a moment, I'm like, oh, all is good. But the check engine light is to notify you that obviously something is wrong. It's the same with our attitude and our behaviors. It signals that something is wrong. And sometimes we won't recognize that. We will think that everybody else has the problem. And so, but sometimes our hearts will tell us, okay, I got a problem. And so we need to go back to the 12 steps, because sometimes, similar to our desire of wanting to feel good, when we feel good, we think we've graduated from the program. But we recognize the program is a lifelong process. Now, the key about this topic, about the willingness to be changed, is that we just have to have that desire to want to be changed. We're not saying we're going to change a certain part of our lives, because we don't actually know what it's going to change. We just have to have the willingness. And when we began the program, chances are is we had no idea of what we're getting ourselves into, and maybe just the willingness to change is all we could really put out on the table, all that we could really commit to. And the other good thing about this is that a lot of times, even when times and life is good, we still have our challenges. And so we will not always live up to the best of our ability. But if we always have that willingness, then we can always begin again. We can always start again. It's like St. Paul said in the New Testament. He says, I know what I'm supposed to do, but I still do the wrong thing. But Paul had the willingness to want to do the right thing even when he failed. And so it's when we have the willingness, even if we don't do the right thing, we can still draw from our willingness and we can still succeed in our lives. Now, if you were to ask somebody, do you want to change? Sometimes they might say, no, I don't think so. That's too much. It's going to be too much work. But if we think about somebody who's caught up in addiction, their emotional and their relational health is poor, their social health is poor, their physical health is not so good, mental health is obviously out the window, spiritual health, what's that? What is spirituality? And the environment is all in a bad state. And so if you told somebody that your emotional health will improve, in other words, you won't fly off the handle every second day, or you won't smother your anger or your resentments, your social health will improve because you won't have to lie to people. Your physical health, you'll feel better. You won't have a headache in the morning. Your mental health, you won't have that hamster going around and around in circles with negative thoughts. You'll actually have some positive thoughts in your head. The environment will begin to change, and you will begin a lifelong connection with your higher power, the God of your understanding. Why would you not want to jump on board? Now let's look at the actual definition of change, and I like to draw from one definition of change is a progression from one phase of life to another. So you're living one life and you're going to progress to another life. Now, does that not fit the program to a T? So you're going to change from a life of addiction to a life of recovery and healing and service towards the common good. Now that has to be considered a good thing. But in order for one to be successful in the program, I'd like to do a little survey with you. So the first question, and it's kind of the theme of this topic, is on a scale of 1 to 10, how willing are you to change? Now 1 being not willing at all, I like myself or who I am. 10 is, yeah, I'm more than willing to experience change. Okay, question number 2 of this survey. How willing are you to learn? Now 1 being, you know what, I've learned all I can. I've been in enough school, enough education, I'm good. So that's 1. 10 is I am more than open to learning. And the final question is, how willing are you to accept and to learn from somebody else what you need to change in your life? So it's not that you're the one that's going to have to make the decision, but you're going to accept the wisdom of somebody else and make the necessary changes. How willing are you? So 1, not at all. And 10, I'm very open to what others have to say to me. Or it could be what your higher power is encouraging of you. Now, if you answered 11 on any of those questions, then I'm pretty sure you're full of it. Now, the beautiful thing about change, and this is even drawn from the Serenity Prayer, is that we ourselves are the ones that make the change. You know, we can be impacted, we can be encouraged by other people, but when push comes to shove, we are the ones that make the change. And so this is something we take ownership of. This is something that can give us purpose and value and meaning in our lives. Now, what can stop us from wanting or having a willingness to change is a fear of the unknown. You know, as you begin the program, a person might think, oh my goodness, I'm going to come out as a keener, or I'm going to come out as, as somebody that's very sophisticated. And I'm afraid of that. I don't want to become that person. And of course, this can disrupt your willingness to want to change. Fear of the unknown. But really, on the other side of this can be the excitement. This can actually be what really motivates us to want to change, is because this unknown will become reality in our lives. And also, if we let the fear of the unknown stop us, then we will not grow, we will not evolve, and we will not progress into being a better human being, a better spouse, a better child, a better sibling. But part of what can really help us, though, is what motivates you. So if we're going to have a willingness to change, what is going to motivate us to be open to this, to even desire this? I went to the Remand Center. This was a long time ago, obviously, and I was visiting with this one gentleman, and he said to me, he says, you know what, Dan, I've been in and out of jail a long time, and you know what, this is my life, it's really not a big deal. Everything's A-okay with me. So obviously at this point, this gentleman doesn't have a willingness to change. Nothing is really motivating him to change. Life is good as far as he is concerned. But one day, his 13-year-old daughter cornered him and said, Dad, if you don't change your life, then I cannot be a part of your life. Now, all of a sudden, this statement from his 13-year-old daughter motivated this gentleman to want to change. So we all need something to motivate us. And sometimes it can be simply our bad actions. Oh, I'm not going there again. I remember when I was a kid, I was plugging in the vacuum cleaner and accidentally put my finger on one of the prongs, and I plugged it in. If you ever want to feel like, if you want to experience 110 volts, then I suggest you do that. No, don't do that. And so I'm motivated to keep my hands away. So we can learn from our past mistakes, and that can be our motivation. We can learn from others. That can motivate us as well. but just simply our inner desire can be our motivation. And sometimes if we wanted to, we have to breathe, obviously, to be alive. And so if we had even the desire to want to breathe was the same desire we wanted to succeed, or having a willingness to change, how easy it would be. Just make it simple. And really, a lot of times when people enter the program, they do have that willingness to want to change because they don't want to keep living the same life they are living. I hear repeated over and over that if I go back to my addiction, I will die. So obviously people want to change. They want to live a different life. So as naturally as breathing is, we ought to have that willingness to want to change as well. Now, I'm going to really throw it out there, if today was your last day, how would you live your life? And of course, you wouldn't pay your bills, you wouldn't go to work. But if we skipped all that stuff, because let's just keep things the way they are. It's more of the attitude that we would bring. We probably would be able to let go of resentments. We would probably be able to want to change to be that willingness to change to be the person that we are supposed to be. And we would probably have a more upbeat attitude in life. And really, when we live one day at a time, this is really the attitude we ought to bring to each and every day. Now, the process of change also leads to growth. We're hoping that the person becomes a better person, or we become better people. And so in that, there's growth. Now, if we think of growing like vegetables, it's very interesting. If you look at a carrot seed, for example, it's very small. You put it in the ground, so a kind of a light beige seed turns into a orange carrot with a green stem. There's growth. There's change, and there's also growth that happens. And growth is good indication that we are becoming a better human being. We're becoming a better citizen in our world. But we recognize in the 12-step program, as it says, once you get to the 12th step, that we have had a spiritual awakening. So in other words, we have experienced our higher power. So we recognize we are spiritual beings. And so it makes sense that we will grow at being spiritual beings, and we will constantly go through change. So this is a good thing. This is not something we need to fear. It's not something we need to walk away from. It's something we need to embrace. And this can actually bring great joy to our lives. And, a very obvious thing is that live the life that you're given. Don't try to live somebody else's life. We're really, if we think about it, I think about my life. I've been on this planet now for 47 years, give or take a second or two. And time has gone by. And so I want to live the life that I can, that I am called to. And I want to be able to do that to the best of my ability, because I will only be here a very short time. And so after a period of time, Leonard, with his willingness to change, did actually change. And everything that was going sideways was kind of reordered. And even he was able to buy back the white picket fence. And once again, the tenderness, the love that Lucy had in her heart for Leonard was rekindled, and they were able to produce their 2.2 kids. Actually, that was 2 kids and 1 goldfish. No, they didn't produce the goldfish. The goldfish was obviously produced another way. And they were to live happily ever after. And so as we go about our willingness to change, maybe we be open to having maybe a fence that has different colors on it. May we be open to what our higher power is going to do in our lives, and may we be open to the excitement of the change that will occur in our lives each and every day, each and every month that we live. I'd like to close out this video with the Serenity Prayer, and then I have 2 questions for you to ponder. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. You know, like anybody who starts the program, there is courage. There is that courage, that willingness to want to be changed. And that flows from the wisdom of the 12-step program. So the 2 questions I invite you to ponder. Question number 1 is, what change brought serenity to your life? And question number 2, are you still willing to change and willing to learn? Why or why not? And so may you continue to work the steps. May you continue to experience the joy of being alive.